Hello everyone, Stefano here from SottoZen channel. Welcome to this video. I will try to show you how to combine in Blender cloth and rigid body simulation in order to get this kind of interactive simulated parachute asset. In fact, at the end of this video, you will have this kind of hierarchy including all the simulated objects, and we will be able simply to grab it and move wherever we want on our scene, and having it to be properly interacting with all the other scene object and nicely simulated, simply playing our simulation. Also simply duplicating our collection, we will have another of this nice parachute to be simulated in our scene. I want to point out that probably this is not a beginner tutorial, even though I will try my best to be clear and simple step by step. I think that a basic knowledge about simulation in Blender is requested in order to properly follow this video. Okay, as you may guess, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Okay, so let's see how to make this parachute simulation. I will keep things as simple as I can. So let's say that we will use a simple cube as our wooden crate, and yeah, we will need a plane object to act as floor for the collision later, so we can scale this 20 times. Okay, we can already assign a rigid body passive object to our floor and a rigid body active object with all the default values as they are. Essentially, so far we just have this simple simulation here with this cube falling down and colliding with the floor object. So what we need now, we need the parachute object itself. So we can use a simple UV sphere, only I want to have 36 segments, and then we can scale these 3 times. Let's move it above our cube, enter edit mode, and we can select, I think, this part and delete all these faces, so we end up with this hemisphere that will be our parachute. Okay, let's also name this correctly, parachute, and this can be the wooden crate. Okay, so essentially what we need now is to have a few ropes that goes from these perimeter points to the center of our cube, and to do so we first need some kind of hook objects all around this base perimeter here. So let's do that. I can enter edit mode and Shift S move my cursor to this point, and then Shift A add a simple plane axis null object that I want to be a little bit smaller than this, something like that. And let's call this parachute hook. Now I can switch back my cursor to the center of my scene with Shift and C. Now I want to duplicate and have few of these, so let's switch to 3D cursor as a pivot point for my rotation, Shift D, and then rotate holding down the control, and then I can both select them, Shift D, rotate once again. Now I have 4 of them, and Shift D and duplicate all of them once again and rotate, this time 45 degrees, holding down the control. You have precise increments, and this is an easy task to do in this way. So now we have these 8 hooks that we have there. So what we want to do now is to parent, we want all these hooks to move along with the paracute object, but if we just parent this null to this object, they will follow, but later this will be useless, because we want this null object to follow exactly this vertex here, this part, and because this object will be later cloth simulated, we want this to stay attached only to this part. And to do so, we have a powerful option in Blender that's very handy, and that's very useful. We can select a vertex, in this case this one. Let's go back to object mode, and then we can select our null, shift select the object, and then Ctrl P, and instead of parenting to object, we want to parent this object to the vertex. So now if I move this, the null is following in the same kind of behavior of the object parentship, but the truth is that this object is following this vertex, and this is the kind of situation that we want. So we want to repeat the same for all. So vertex, edit mode, I select the vertex, then shift select, Ctrl P, vertex, edit mode, vertex, shift select, Ctrl P, vertex, edit mode, vertex, shift select, Ctrl P, vertex. I just realized that this was not visible. I apologize for that. I have to let this stay open in order to see this screencast. Okay, once again, shift, I select the vertex that I want, go back to object mode, null, shift select, Ctrl P, vertex. Now I don't remember how many of them. Okay, these two are missing. Edit mode, vertex, shift select, vertex, and the last one, the null object, shift select, paracute, Ctrl P, and vertex. So now if I move my paracute, all these null objects are following, and they are following the vertex that they are attached to. So now what we need is another null object. So let's this time we can use a sphere. Let's bring this somewhere here on the top of our cube, and we can make this also smaller, and let's call this cube hook. Now I want this to be child of our active object here, so I can shift select and this time set parent to object. So now if I play the simulation, this null object is following our active rigid body, and now we have to create some kind of rope that goes from this point to this one. So now in order to create the ropes, what I will use is I will try with a simple mesh object like a cylinder. 8 vertices are more than enough, and I will try to scale this very thin like our rope is supposed to be, and then I will simply rotate and scale. Then I can apply the scale. In edit mode, I can select these vertices and move them to the first of my paracute hook. Then I can invert this selection and place this at the center of the box hook. something like this. At this point I can also set back the origin to the geometry. And now what I need to do is to have these vertices here to be hooked to this null. And to do so, we have to have our vertices selected, and then holding Ctrl, we want to select the object to which they have to be hooked, and then pressing Ctrl H, we want to select hook to selected object. Now if I go to object mode and I move this, you see that they are following. Let's do the same. I invert once again the selection, and I can do once again the same process. So Ctrl select this null, and then Ctrl H and hook to selected object. So now at this point, if I play my simulation, you can see that our cylinder is deforming and following the position and of our box hook. Okay, the next step will be to add some cloth simulation to this rope object. Let's rename this properly, rope. But before doing that, we need to add more resolution to this. Otherwise, it won't be able to deform. Okay, so we can do that pressing Ctrl and R and adding a lot of loop cuts, something like that. Now that we have all these selected, before proceed, I want to Ctrl and I to invert once again the selection, and I want these two extreme vertices to be a part of a vertex group. So I will press Ctrl and G and assign them to a new group that I can see here under this vertex group panel. And let's rename this pin or pins. Essentially, during the cloth simulation, we will tell Blender that these pins has to stay still and attached, not follow the cloth simulation. You can see that here in the modifier stack, we have the two hook modifier attached to our rope object. So let's add a cloth simulation to our object. So I can already increase a little bit the quality step, and by the experience of the former experiments, I know that I want the vertex to be a little bit more heavy, so let's say 1 kilogram for vertex max. And here under shape, we want to assign the pins vertex loop that we just created. You can see that now some nice cloth simulation is already happening. Okay, now it is time that our paracute object is also a cloth simulated one, and that will be able to follow the action. So let's just add cloth simulation to it. Also here I will add some more weight. So now if I play the simulation, you can see that's working. You can see that the rope is following this point, and this means we are on the right way, I guess. And what we miss is to add this cube object also has a collision, so that our paracute will collide as a cloth object when it will hit this. And the same thing we want to have with the floor object. We want it also to be a collision object. So now so far we have this. Okay, sometimes we have this kind of problem. If you have this kind of problem, is like that the cloth is colliding with the starting position of our cube. It's like it is not taking into consideration that our cube is moving down. And to solve this, you have to go to the rigid body properties, and here you want to change this source under the collision, source from deform to base. And now it works. Okay. So now I want to add all the other ropes. To do this, I can move the cursor to this object, and I want to simply change the pivot point to 3D cursor, and I want to simply duplicate this all around my paracute object. So Shift D, and before doing that, because you can see that if I now do this, the hook vertices stay connected there. So the right way to do this is to Shift D duplicate, and before continuing with the rotation, here on the modifier stack, I want to delete this paracute hook object, because this will be changed later. I can instead leave the cube hook, because it will be the same for all. Now essentially, if I switch to the top view and I rotate with my control key, hold it down, I can now simply duplicate them. Shift D, rotate, Shift D, I rotate holding down the control for have precise increments, of course. Shift D and rotate, and Shift D and rotate. I think we have, no, one is missing. Shift D and rotate. We have all our ropes in place now. And now, except this one, we have to reassign the hook object for all of them. And to do this, we have to simply use this eyedrop picker and choose the right one. So pick this one, select the rope, pick this one, select the rope, pick this one, select, pick, select, pick, select, pick, select, and pick, and this already has, so we have all. Okay, so now each one of the rope has the base hook here for this null object, and these different hooks that we attached to the vertices of our paracute object. So hopefully now if we play our simulation, you see, okay, I don't like to see these relationship lines. They are only messing up the scene, so I can get rid of them here, choosing, unchecking these relationship lines. I don't need to see that. So if we now play the simulation, we start to have something. Okay. Now the resolution of our paracute is a little bit too low to have some nice, so we can simply add one subdivision surface modifier that we want to have on top of our cloth simulation. Of course now it will be slower but more interesting. So we have still things to tune up and fix. The first one, let's shade smooth our paracute, and under collision here we need to enable self collision, and this will slow down even more our simulation, but is still acceptable. And the second thing is that you can see that our ropes are now ignoring the collision with the parachute. Okay, and we can fix this, making this parachute also a collision object. Okay, let's try now. And it seems that it's not working, and that's because this collision under the soft body and cloth panel properties here, we have this single-sided option turned on, and because this has no thickness, I think we have to uncheck this option here. If I now try once again the simulation, yeah, and you can see that now the ropes are staying and colliding also with our parachute. We have, of course, a little bit of issues here, and we can avoid this using, under the collision, we have this distance. Essentially, this creates some kind of ghost distance between the two objects colliding. So let's try to increase this to 0.005, and let's try, and let's see if it's a little bit better. You see, we already solved this. Okay, so now I want to have this to be an hierarchy that I can move around and reset the position or rotation, and then have the simulation working from each starting point that I choose. So I want to have another empty object, sphere. This time I want this to be bigger, and I want to call this CTR global parachute, and essentially I will make this the parent object for all these simulated items here. So I can select the cube, and then I can shift select the parachute and make them child of this. So now if I move this, they will follow, and also I want to select, shift select all the ropes and have them to be also child of my controller object. I miss one, it looks like I miss one. So let's try to move around, and I miss another one, this one. So now this is working, and if I move this, something is happening. I don't know from where this is coming out. I think I probably duplicate some of these for mistake. I think I can simply get rid of this object. Sorry for that. If I move this, I can move all the hierarchy, and I can also let's switch back to medium point here. I can also rotate and have him start. Okay, of course you can see that this kind of simulation asset has some limitation. For example, you have to work on the you see that the velocity with the rigid body is falling down is faster than the velocity of our cloth simulation, and you can see that because our ropes are becoming longer and longer, and that's not correct. So I found out that you can work on that, tweaking the parameters of your parachute cloth object And for example, if you increase the or also you can increase the overall speed multiplier, let's say 1.5. You see now they are falling down almost at the same velocity, but a little bit too much, because you see that the ropes are now slowing down. So it's a matter of trying to balance these two kinds of simulation, because now we are playing with two different worlds. One is the rigid body simulation and the other one is the cloth simulation, and we are trying to connect them, and this is some kind of experimental test that I'm doing, and I know that there's room for improvement, of course. But what I can do, I can try to find a compromise value here that give me some nice result. And if you want to see if it works, let's reset or the rotation. You have just to bring this higher, because bringing this higher, it has more way to fall, and you can see that on the way down the ropes are a little bit acting like elastic bands. Yes, this is the part where I accept the compromise. I mean, I like this kind of behavior, and I can tweak the values on the way that I need. And one last thing that's very nice to do is that, let's call this collection Paracute 1. You can just duplicate the entire collection, and you have already another, and you can already duplicate another one, and you already have 3 nice paracute that will fall down together. Of course, the simulation will slow a lot. Okay, let's set the end frame to 100 frames. What is this? Oh, by mistake I also duplicate the plane object. I made a lot of mess today. Okay, be patient with this, guys. So let's simulate once again. So as I said at the beginning of this video, I know that's not probably perfect, but I think it's an interesting way to have the cloth and rigid body world interacting together in Blender. And okay, I hope that you guys somehow learned something useful, and if so, please leave a like or a comment, or even a suggestion if you have, to improve this kind of simulation project. I also remind you that I will upload this Blender file, and it will be there to be downloaded from my supporters, so be sure to visit my Patreon page and consider support me and my work even more. And as always, thanks so much for watching this, and see you soon with another great video. Ciao!